How is it kicking, everyone? I'm your boy HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes and all the content on the channel. We're back after 1 week of break, of course, due to the international break itself. This episode is pretty much a roundup. I decided to do just one episode about it and round up things that happened throughout the international break. The biggest points really to talk about in the qualifiers from Europe, and I chose also to talk about Africa as well. Follow us on social media. I'm on Twitter, links in the description, of course, also available on Spotify to listen to, and you're welcome. Join us here for episode 6 of the podcast. So let's take a look at the beginning at what happened in Europe. Of course, it was a pretty interesting international break in Europe. We saw, I think, the different side of the spectrum of teams, struggling to get results and teams enjoying great performances. We're going to start by talking about the standings of the groups pretty quickly. Of course, in Group A, Portugal are definitely top of the group, 13 points. Only 2 points ahead of Serbia. Of course, they defeated Ireland 2-1 with an iconic remontada thanks to Cristiano Ronaldo. Then, of course, they beat Qatar in a friendly. Of course, it doesn't count because Qatar is a sort of a guest in the group just to prepare for the World Cup. Then they defeated Azerbaijan away from home, of course, 3-0 as well. It definitely was an interesting international break for Portugal. The first game was a pretty struggle-ish one for them, and then, of course, they managed to get the points needed from Azerbaijan as well. Of course, Luxembourg 6 points, Ireland with 2 points, and Azerbaijan with 1 point. In Group B, Spain is top with 13 points, and they struggled as well in the group. Of course, after the loss against Sweden, they managed to defeat both Kosovo and Georgia, which is a really interesting situation for Spain. Of course, after losing against Sweden, they're 4 points ahead of Sweden, who missed the opportunity of getting anywhere close in Spain by dropping points against Greece in the last game of the qualifiers. Definitely, doesn't help their chances in qualifying directly, so they'll probably look to go through the playoffs again like they did in 2018. They've actually defeated Italy, the Euro winners, last time out to do so. Kosovo, of course, with 4 points, Greece before them with 6 points, and Georgia with 1 point at that group. In Group C, it is Italy, Switzerland, North Ireland, Bulgaria, and Lithuania. Italy struggled this time around, really, in the first couple of games against both Switzerland and Bulgaria. They'd drawn 0-0 and 1-1 respectively in those games. I mean, despite the first game against Bulgaria being in Italy, they somehow missed their points, and also the game against Switzerland, they looked, not that good. I'm not going to say out of the depth, but definitely the first couple of games after winning the Euros, the expectation, sort of the general consensus for people to see Italy play great football, it wasn't exactly there. But definitely in the third game against, Lithuania, at least they got it right. They smashed them 5-0. Of course, it was a great performance overall from them. Moise Kean with a couple of goals as well. Giacomo Raspadori, a player that I really wanted to see in the Italian national team, got his time and scored a brace as well in the game. I mean, a couple of pretty much stab-ins, but let's face it, he deserves those goals anyway. 14 points for Italy at the top of that group. Switzerland 8 points, Northern Ireland 5 points, Bulgaria 5 points, and Lithuania with 0 points. Group D, here's where it comes the real struggle actually of the group. It was France, Ukraine, Finland, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Kazakhstan. France were the weakest performers, I think, of this international break, if I might add. At least Spain had a good game against Sweden, then they managed to sort of make up for them by victories against Georgia and Kosovo. But France were struggling, were really struggling. They drawn a couple of games against, they really drawn a unnecessary game against Bosnia and Herzegovina, where they, were leading and all of that, and they sort of, although they were trailing actually behind in both games against Bosnia and Herzegovina and Ukraine, and came from behind. It wasn't exactly the most, slick performance of France. Definitely after what happened in the Euros, everybody was like on their backs as well. Some of the squad choices were still weird, how they're still picking Adrien Rabiot to be in the squad, what happened with Mbappe and all of that. Mbappe wasn't in the third game against Finland, the game that France eventually won 2-0, and at least they made up for the couple of games that they had against Bosnia and against Ukraine. Ukraine have 5 points in the second place, Finland 5 points, Bosnia-Herzegovina and Kazakhstan both with 3 points. In Group E, it's Belgium, Czech Republic, Wales, Belarus and Estonia. This group I think doesn't have any problems in it. Belgium with 16 points, leading the group way ahead of anybody. Of course, Czech Republic looks like it's going to be in a big competition with Wales for the playoff spots, while Belarus and Estonia really do not have any chance in hell. 3 points for Belarus and 1 for Estonia. In Group F, something similar I think as well. Denmark, Scotland, Israel, Austria, Faroe Islands and Moldova. Denmark are leading the group with 18 points. Of course, they defeated defeated Israel 5-0. They managed to also beat Moldova. They managed to beat also Scotland. Actually lost to Scotland 1-0. It was a weird result, freak result for Denmark to losing to Scotland 1-0, who are 11 points. Of course, they're also going to be in the playoffs, it seems, or at least they're going to be competing with Israel and Austria for that spot, and Faroe Island and Moldova 4 points and 1 point respectively. Group G, I think the highlight, I think, of the whole break, in my opinion, is Netherlands performing really well in the couple of games that they had. Of course, they defeated Turkey, of course, 5-1. That's the 6-1. That's the biggest result that they had throughout the break. Definitely also the kind of game that has really shown what Memphis was made of. They were incredible in beating Turkey 6-1. They defeated Montenegro 4-0 as well. The draw away to Netherlands was weird, with the first game of Van Gaal in charge, of course, after the Euros. So it definitely looks like the return of the normal Netherlands in a way, which is something that I'm really happy about personally, because that really shows how good Netherlands can be as a nation that I love watching in terms of playing football. Norway with 13 points continue their strong showing as well. They're going to be really annoying for that early place. Definitely the next game between Norway and Netherlands, or the next game where Netherlands are going to be dropping points in these qualifiers, is going to be really crucial. Actually, they still have a game against each other. It's going to be all the way in November, in the last international break leading to that World Cup. Turkey 11 points. They still in it, of course. They're not far away, but that performance has dipped a little bit throughout this last international break. Montenegro 8 points, Latvia 5 points, and Gibraltar 0 points. In Group H, Croatia are top with 13 points, Russia with 13 points on top as well, Slovakia with 9 points, Slovenia 7, Malta and Cyprus with 4. Looks like Croatia and Russia are going to be battling it out for the top spot, and Slovakia probably, at the very best, are going to get a playoff spot. In Group I, England top with 16 points, 2 victories and a draw. Albania with 12 points, Poland with 11 points. It looks like it's going to be a competition between Albania and Poland for the playoff spot, and if Albania get it, that's going to be historic for them. But still, of course, there's still 4 matches to be played in that group. England, of course, with a couple of convincing performances in the first couple of games against Hungary and Andorra, a couple of 4-0 victories. Then, of course, the game against Poland where they led late in the game, and then they also conceded the equaliser late in the game as well. But definitely looks like England are going to qualify through. There's no real issue that it seems about it. They got away the couple of games against Poland now, and it looks like they're leading and heading towards topping the group in a really good fashion. Hungary with 10 points, Andorra 3 points, and San Marino 0 points, and 24 goals conceded by San Marino, being the second worst defence in this competition after Gibraltar with 25 points, with 25 goals conceded. And lastly, Group J, of course, Germany 15 points. The first 3 games in the Hansi Flick era were really good. 3 clean sheets, 3 victories, convincing victories, I would say. Maybe the hardest one was against Liechtenstein, but just because the first half ended goalless. And the other couple of games, they were more comfortable against Armenia 6-0, they were more comfortable against Iceland 4-0. And, of course, with Germany reverting back to the 4-2-3-1 that worked too well for them in the World Cup in 2014 and brought them a trophy back then. Hansi Flick returns to the basics, really, and, doesn't mess it up. You look at Timo Werner is shining, you look at Sane is shining, Gnabry is shining. The whole performance is great, really, from the German side. Again, with clean sheets, That's the biggest thing you could ask for, really, from the German national team after the calamities that they went through in the last World Cups and the last couple of Euros as well. Armenia with 11 points looks to be the playoff team in this group, although they're going to have strong competition from Romania and North Macedonia as well, with 9 points. 4 points for Iceland, of course. Unfortunately, they're not going to have anywhere near the miracles that they had before, and Liechtenstein solely with 1 point. So overall, it was a pretty, I'm not going to say unsurprising international break in Europe, but definitely a break with the ups and downs. We saw some of the big teams struggling, some of the big teams finding their form back, and definitely the highlight for me was Netherlands really showing off how skillful they can be. And Louis van Gaal, again, a familiar face who knows them, and he seems going to be leading them really, really well into the future. Moving on, and from Europe, I go to Africa now, and it was the start, actually, of the World Cup qualifiers. It was supposed to start in June, actually, but because of COVID-19 restrictions and all of that, they're not properly organized, and they had to, sort of push them back towards September. And we start from Group A, the group where the champions of Africa, Algeria, were there. And they started on sublimely strong foot by defeating Djibouti 8-0, but then they were held to a draw against Burkina Faso away from home, or actually at a neutral place. Technically, they played in Marrakesh the next game against Burkina Faso, and they drawn 1-1. They looked strong in both games, but definitely they were less lucky, I would say, against Burkina Faso than they were against Djibouti. Burkina Faso, who also defeated Niger in the first game of this qualifiers. Niger themselves had defeated Djibouti in the second game. So 4 points for Algeria, 4 for Burkina Faso, Niger with 3 points. I really have no doubts that Algeria are going to go through and top in the group quite easily, but it's just those tricks and maybe those points that could be, could be proven to really endure and intensify the struggle for Algeria in this group. I mean, it's an easy group on paper, but they could still struggle. Anyway, but in my opinion, again, Algeria are going to go through. I don't have really no doubts about it. In Group B, and the group of my country, Tunisia, we started actually pretty strong in this qualifiers. We beat both Equatorial Guinea and we beat Zambia away from home 2-0, albeit both games have a lot of question marks about them. In the game against Equatorial Guinea, the first half was pretty weird, and then the second half was good. Then in the other game against Zambia, it was, I think, the opposite, or pretty much it was the opposite. It was the first half being really good, and then the second half being really a big struggle, and the goalkeeper for really saving us from a couple of goals that Zambia could have scored, and they could have made the game really worse for us. On the other aisle, Equatorial Guinea managed to defeat Mauritania in the second round, of course, after losing to us, and Zambia also defeated Mauritania, who really looked like the dark horse of this group before the qualifiers started, but now seem to have really no chance in going through. 3 points for both Zambia and Equatorial Guinea, behind Tunisia with 6 points, and Mauritania with 0 in Group B. In Group C, Algeria 6 points. They started really well, although the couple of games that they have were really, really hard. They started against both Liberia and Cape Verde. They defeated both, albeit it was a hard game to play in a couple of opportunities. I mean, the game against Cape Verde was pretty rough at home. Also, they defeated Liberia away from home, so it looks like it will be an easy group as well for Nigeria. So, I mean, nothing really special in the African qualifiers in general. You know who's going to qualify to the next round. Is just only a handful of groups, if only a couple of groups, I would say, that have this mystique about them and surprise sort of aspect about them that you could really not predict who's going to go through to the qualifying final round. As I mentioned, Nigeria 6 points, Liberia with 3, Cape Verde and Central African Republic share 1 point in third and fourth. In Group D, it's Ivory Coast and Cameroon. In Group D, of course, 4 points for Ivory Coast after defeating Mozambique and drawing against after defeating Cameroon and drawing against Mozambique. Cameroon on the other side, they drawn against Mozambique and they lost against Ivory Coast, and then they defeated, of course, Mozambique in the second round. Defeated Malawi in the second round, who managed to defeat Mozambique in the first one. Of course, 4 points for Ivory Coast, 3 for Cameroon, 3 for Malawi, and 1 for Mozambique. This is one of those few groups that I talked about where there might be some competition for the top spot. Ivory Coast and Cameroon, two really giants of the African football. They could battle it out to see who's going to go through from their group. In Group E, Mali, 4 points, Kenya and Uganda with 2 points from 2 draws for each, and Rwanda with 1 point, of course. Mali are joining Tunisia in the African Cup of Nations group as well, so that's why I'm really focusing on their group as well. Group F, Libya are top of that group with 6 points after defeating both Gabon and Angola. They still didn't play the couple of games against Egypt, so that's, I think, the big metric in this group. Egypt, by the way, appointed Carlos Queiroz as their new manager. The former Iran and Portugal and Real Madrid and Manchester United assistant manager, alongside Alex Ferguson, is the new Egypt coach, and it seems to be a really radical shift in the national team in Egypt after the couple of coaches they had as of late, which were not exactly successful experiences. So yeah, it looks like a period of change, and it comes after some bad results for Egypt as well in this qualifiers. A couple of results they had: the draw against Gabon. Before that, the really unsurprising, unceremonious victory against Angola 1-0, pretty rough victory as well against Angola 1-0. It almost turned into a draw late in the game. They get 4 points behind Libya, of course, with 6 points, Gabon with 1 point, and Angola with a single. Angola with no points at all. In Group G, South Africa top that group, 4 points after defeating Ghana and drawing against Zimbabwe. 3 points to Ghana, 3 points to Ethiopia, who defeated Zimbabwe, and 3 points to Ghana, who defeated Ethiopia in the second round. 1 point for Zimbabwe for drawing against South Africa. So it definitely looks like this group as well is another one where we're going to see competition, probably between South Africa and Ghana. Maybe Ethiopia is going to get into the way. Who knows what can happen. In Group H, Senegal topping the group with 6 points, a couple of victories against Congo and Togo, against Congo and Togo, 3-0 and 3-1 respectively. Sadio Mane scoring in both games, improving and impressing in those couple of games. Senegal again looks like a surefire qualifier from this group. Of course, the second or third ranked team in Africa, and they really look like the kind of team that would just blitz through this group and go through. And in Group I, the last couple of groups in this qualifiers, Guinea-Bissau are top of the group, but with big asterisk since Morocco didn't play the second game against Guinea because of the situation going on in Guinea. There's a coup d'etat going on there, and the security status is not exactly that good there. Guinea-Bissau with 4 points from a couple of games they played, Guinea with 1 point, Morocco with the 3 points of the first victory against Sudan, who are of course with 0 points after losing 4-2 against Guinea-Bissau in the second game. And in Group J, lastly, Tanzania with 4 points. This could legitimately be the surprise of the group, of the tournament, of the whole qualifiers. I mean, it looks like an open group from everything considered. I mean, Tanzania, Benin, Congo and Madagascar. We'll see who's going to go through to the qualifying round from those, but it looks like Tanzania might be the most closest, with Benin as well. It's an interesting group. It's an open group, unlike the other 9, really. Well, it sounds like those teams that are going to go unopposed pretty much in qualifying to the last round. Again, nothing special really overall in Africa. The usual suspects are winning their games at top in the group. The likes of Nigeria, Tunisia, Algeria, the highest ranked sides are really going to blitz through those groups. But of course, again, only a handful of groups where you could say that there is real competition in the continent. To finish off, we move on to South America, and we're not going to talk about results or anything. We're going to talk actually about one of the weirdest stories that happens throughout this international break and through this week of international football, which took place in Brazil, of course. I don't think I need to recap the story, but somehow I just need to tell it as it is, as it happened. Not a recap, not bullet points, but as it happened. So this is the game between Brazil and Argentina, a game that people around the world were expecting, and it was happening in a really good time zone. Like, it was taking place at 5 p.m. Tunisian time, and the whole world could watch it. Really, you could watch it in China, you could watch it in the United States, you could watch it everywhere. The whole world was setting themselves up to watch it, and it's a big game. It has a backstory now after Brazil lost their Copa America on their ground against Argentina, of course, and Messi winning his first international trophy, and that whole emotional story. And after all of that, and the hype for this game was really off the chart. I mean, it's one of the few occasions where you could say, oh my goodness, I can't wait to watch a qualify in South America. I mean, to be fair, Throughout history, those qualifiers have been always great. Whenever I watch a match in the qualifiers of South America, have been great, exciting, enticing, really. The crowds and the atmosphere, always amazing there. But in the last couple of years, and since COVID-19 hit, and specifically South America took a big effect in that pandemic, took a big hit during that pandemic. I mean, there's little to no crowds in South American football at the moment. The Delta variant just surging over there. There's multiple, actually, variants. There's Brazilian variants and all of that. So it troubled South America more than any other continent, I would say, especially in 2021, and the way they had to organize the Copa America and how it felt as a competition overall. So again, enough diving outside of the story. So the game started 7 minutes into that game, and responsibles and delegates from the health department in Brazil decided that it's the proper time and the right time during the middle of a game to really say, oh, your players didn't quarantine properly. And also the situation, of course, involves 4 players who all in the Premier League, of course, both Lo Celso and Lamela from from Tottenham. Also, you have, the couple of players that play, in Aston Villa, Emiliano Martinez and Emiliano Buendia. Both are supposed to be quarantining, of course, because of the rules that the United Kingdom has Brazil on their red list. Obviously, the CONMEBOL and the FIFA and all of the authorities decided that the game should go on, and sort of the both federations and the Brazilian FA sort of agreed on that, to have the match go on. But for some reason, the delegates of the health department decided that during the game itself, it's a good time to stop. Obviously, there's whole sorts of explanations, ranging from the from the lack of communication to the actual conspiracy that is, yes, the Brazilian FAs just wanted the match to stop because they hate Argentina. Obviously, that's a stupid idea. But to have the match stop like that, to have those kind of procedures being taken during the game, or being checked during the game, I mean, the Argentinian players and the Brazilian players have the right to go off the pitch and decide to not play the game. And after, of course, a couple of pushing and pulling and talks being, sustained and all of that, I mean, they could have easily told the national team and the Argentinian coach, they could have told them easily, don't pick those players because they're not going to be playing, let them quarantine, just, you can get them with the squad and just quarantine. They would have been able to play against Venezuela, and they played against Venezuela, but they didn't play against Brazil. And it makes really zero sense, in my opinion, that somehow this game should have stopped inside 7 minutes just because of this reason, and because, you're supposed to be checking the quarantine status of some players. You should have checked it before the game. I mean, the simplest of things. I mean, it's not an underworld. It's a normal, organized World Cup qualifier under authorities from FAs and from FIFA. So these things should be checked and done already. Why they waited until now, nobody knows. Obviously, the story has more to it, unfolds as the days go on. But definitely, as far as the story itself, as the game itself, it was a shambolic moment that probably going to feature on some lists as the worst moments of the 2021 year, in terms of not just in sports. I mean, in terms of general moments, like it was weird. It was weird just watching the game, being excited, and again being excited about the game that's taking place in a normal time, especially for me because I don't have to stay up for 1 a.m. in the morning, 2 a.m. in the morning watching South American games. I'm watching a game at 5 p.m. In the afternoon, really relaxed. And inside 7 minutes, they decide to screw it up. What is the decision now is going to be from CONMEBOL? Are you going to award both teams the points now? Are you going to award each a point because the game was 0-0 at the time? I don't think that should work. The game should be replayed and should be rescheduled. But when, how, and with what kind of organization are you going to do that? And this is going to create tension, by the way, between the Brazilian and Argentinian FA, because this is not going to be forgotten. This is going to be paid back somehow when Brazil travels to Argentina to face Argentina. This is going to be some sort of a grudge-holding moments in football between two sides that already hold grudges against each other for multiple reasons. And now they're just going to add fuel to the fire, really. It's going to be that kind of a problem once again. So overall, I think this was the biggest story, really, in terms of stories of the international break. You can't really overshadow the European international break or the qualifiers easily, but this one did, because this was the talk of the town everywhere in the world, and how shambolic and how disastrous this was all around the world. That's it for this episode for the international break roundup. I was the host, HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive the updates, follow us on social media, the links in the description and the usernames on the screen, and you can follow us and listen on Spotify, Google Podcast, or any other platform. And until next time, I'll see you soon.